Hi! It is still unknown how exactly the evolution of man took place. What prompted our ancestors to create tools of labor, language, and art? Sharp changes in the climate or successful actions of the strongest and most capable? Or maybe it was those individuals who were not supposed to survive due to their innate misfortunes and became those inventors who moved progress forward. A flock of monkeys is called for a general meeting on the tree of ancestors. The shaman begins a ritual dance, which is met by the King Simeon. Today is a special day. The queen gives birth to the husband of the heir. But the advisor Vladimir, who was giving birth, is not yet ready to show the children of the tribe. He reports to Simeon that he had two heirs, but there is one nuance. He invites the king to the room, where he finds a healthy and strong son. The father chooses a name for him, Vanya. The boy turns out to be all into his dad and first of all beats Simeon right in the nose. However, Vladimir reports that his older brother was born before him, who turns out to be much smaller and has almost no hair on his body. In order for the tribe to survive, the heir must be strong, and this one is unlikely to be able to take care of himself. He looks strange, unnaturally small. Why do you need him? The shaman advises to get rid of the useless burden as soon as possible, and the king orders Vladimir to throw him out as a predator. The advisor goes to carry out the mission, driving away the witch who is too eager to kill the child with his own hands. Simeon remains alone with his wife. She asks where her second child is, to which he receives the answer that he did not survive. Regretting what had happened, the female takes her last breath and dies. Meanwhile, Vladimir climbs to the edge of the branch and calls for a tree-toothed wolf. He tries to throw the baby right into his mouth, but the baby clings to his fingers and reaches for the advisor. This touches Vladimir, and he is close to changing his mind. But the terrible roar of the king, who has just lost his wife, makes him remember the mission. The baby flies down, and here his tiny body becomes an advantage. Even ordinary leaves soften the free fall, and in the end he gets entangled in the liana and dangles on it like on a Tarzan. The prey at the last moment slips away from the wolf, but he quickly clings to the liana to get closer to the monkey. Not realizing the imminent danger, the baby again joyfully pulls the handles forward, and the predator clenches his right hand in his teeth. The monkey shouts in pain, but the wolf does not hold back and flies down, losing one fang. At this moment, Ivan is demonstrated by the tribe, and the monkeys joyfully greet the heir to the dance. At this moment, a big but stupid male named Jan finds his brother on the liana and helps him to free himself. He amuses the baby by loudly sneezing with his big nose and blowing bubbles from his saliva. Jan is going further on his business, but he notices that the monkey cannot even move on his own due to the damaged hand. The baby cries and insistently asks to take him with him. The big monkey cannot resist the charm of the boy and becomes his guardian. He gives the foundling the name Edward. A few years later, the right hand of the grown-up boy still dangles helplessly from the side of the body, and Jen continues to roll him on his back. They land in their shelter on the trunk of a broken tree, where their feathered pet also lives. Hungry Edward tries to find a stash in the form of fruits, but it turns out to be empty in the hiding place. A violent and sharp-tongued teenager accuses the impudent and slow-witted Jen that he ate everything again. But the predator turns out to be a small rodent that is trying to escape with the robber. Edward wants to catch the impudent, but his cowardice does not allow him to grab the branches normally. The monkey breaks off and falls on his back, and his gaze attracts the bird's nest. Edward's brains begin to work rapidly, and he comes up with how to build a trap. He gives Jan 3 sticks, one of which turns out to be in his mouth. The monkey blows out a wooden resin from the hollow stem, inflating a huge bubble. The sticky substance turns out to be very convenient to use it to build traps. But then their business is interrupted by the sound of a horn that announces the beginning of the game in a coconut ball, which Edward loves very much. Jan is afraid to go to the match. Friends live separately from the other monkeys because they are bullied over them because of their features. Edward notes that the companion is much larger than the offenders, and in a fight he can easily put them down. In the worst case, you can just growl, and everyone will run away from fear. Just do it like this. The kind Jin does not know how to terrify enemies and ties himself to a tree with a rope, showing his protest. To get to the final game, Edward has to threaten that he will now jump down from the edge of the branch. In order for the friend not to break, Jin has to catch him in flight. They get to the arena, where they line up on the branch. The monkeys, hanging from the vines, try to get to the coconut in the mouth of the huge skull faster than the rest. The star of the championship, the son of King Vanya, scores a goal in a beautiful jump. Semyon is very pleased with the heir, and the fans shout in the form of their idol. The second round begins, and Vanya roughly knocks down the opponent, which causes anger in the father. The ball flies high up, and Jan, who is not able to understand all the rules, runs after him. Edward tries to hold him, but in the end, they both fall right into the center of the arena. The coconut rolls, and the monkeys begin to accuse two morons who spoiled the match. Edward is rudely pushed back when he tries to justify a close friend. Then he advises Jan to use the method of intimidation that they trained earlier. The cheeky attempt does not impress anyone, but the monkeys consider the intention to fight. Jan begins to surround, while Edward finds a ball rolled into the gap. With the help of a stick and resin, he picks it up and goes out to the crowd. Less perceptive monkeys are impressed by the invention, and Vanya approaches to return the ball. Edward hopes to somehow participate in the matches and offers to hang another skull to make the game team. During their dialogue, the shaman and Vladimir notice a short finger on the leg of a delusional stranger and understand that he is the son of a king. Vanya is not going to change the rules and tries to start the match by launching the coconut up. But his hand sticks, and the monkeys try to help him stick out. Everyone pulls in different directions, and the coconut flies up, landing directly on Simeon's head. Vladimir tears off the stuck ball along with the hair of the king's hair. Now there is a huge bald spot on Simeon's head, which he demands to cover with someone's hair. Since no one wants to become a volunteer, they decide that the hair should be given to the inventor of glue. The king demands to know his name and bring it to him. Later, Vladimir comes to the shaman to understand how to solve the problem they have. He shivers with fear when he sees skulls and bones in her home and assures that he has abandoned the baby to predators. He has no idea how the child managed to survive, and the dark monkey chases the advisor, spilling curses. Suddenly, Vanya appears from the darkness, who overheard the conversation. The shaman reveals the truth to him. She turns away so as not to get caught in the hot hand, and then offers her help. When Vanya leaves, the monkeys use magic to attract blacksmiths, who he intends to use to get rid of Edward once and for all. Meanwhile, Jen and his friend return home. Edward suffers from loneliness and persuades to move closer to the tribe, to communicate more with other monkeys. Jen refuses abruptly. He lives well as an outcast. He offers Edward to go alone, but he does not want to leave his friend. In addition, he does not imagine life without his right hand. This time, Jan expresses protest, turning to Edward in the face of the fifth point. Here they are noticed by two monkeys sent by Vladimir, the bald brother of Vladimir Sergei and the stupid Bugай Marcel. While Jan is hiding in fear, Edward and his property are kidnapped and brought to the flock. He appears in front of Simeon, who accuses the inventor of his sudden baldness. The inquisitive Edward makes a crown of leaves and branches with one hand, covering the baldness of his father. The subjects are stunned by the majestic appearance of Simeon, and he himself also becomes very pleased. The only ones who are not pleased with such a development of events are Vanya and the shaman. While Edward is looking for new ways to impress the king, the monkey goes to look for a way to get rid of him. With the help of water and a large jug, Edward creates a mirror and demonstrates his reflection to Simeon. At first, frightened by the competitor, the king jumps away, but then he takes it with interest to consider himself. After that, Edward creates a throne of lianas and huge leaves, and now the king can comfortably see the distant borders of the kingdom. But his delight is interrupted by a swarm of locusts, which the witch sends. In a frenzy, the lianas of the throne burst, and Simeon falls down from a great height. The shaman shouts that Edward killed the king and demands to punish him. Vanya grabs his brother by the neck and throws him down the cliff. Jan sees with horror how Edward flies far down. But Simeon himself is alive and climbs back to the tribe. He is dissatisfied that the inventor was unfairly punished. Vanya angrily asks his father why he did not tell him that he had a brother. The family affairs are managed by the head of the family. In a rage, the king turns to Vladimir, who failed the task. But the problem was solved by itself. Edward lies unconscious, and the predators will soon devour him on the ground. Jan descends on the liana and wants to help, but cannot reach his friend. Edward's head is spinning, and he cannot climb up a tree with one hand. Instead, he goes straight to the savannah, where it is not necessary to use the front limbs to move. However, here, too, not everything is so simple, and there are pits on the flat ground where it is easy to fall through if you fall asleep. Having gotten out of bed, Edward meets two giant ostriches. He wants to reach a bunch of grapes in the mouth of one of them, and in the process straightens to full growth. Thus, the monkey learns to stand on two legs and is fully delighted with this. But then a flock of wolves appears, and the ostriches begin to run away on their own. Edward is also trying to run, but so far he can only do it in reverse. The monkeys notice how the surviving inventor is trying to escape again. They cheer him up, and someone even offers to make baits. Having noticed the ostrich's running technique, Edward understands how to switch the transmission box and moves forward. On his straight legs, he turns out to be very nimble, and the wolves cannot catch up with him. A non-working arm is not a hindrance to a guy for the first time in his life. The ostriches are trying to get away from the chase, waving through a flock of rhinos, and Edward follows them. The giant animals are also scared of the predators and begin to run away, heading straight for the monkey tree. The rhinos also turn out to be the ancestors of the armadillos and turn into a ball before colliding with the tribe's house. Simeon has to stand alone to protect the flock and Edward, who is helplessly waiting for his fate. The king jumps down and bravely reflects the attack, throwing several rhinos aside. But his strength is not enough, and the flock knocks him down. The tree shatters from the blow, but he manages to withstand it, unlike Simeon. The last thing he does is protect his son with his body, and he himself receives fatal wounds. At his last breath, he apologizes to Edward for wanting to get rid of him and calls him his heir. Accustomed to being a loose end, the guy can't put a full picture in his head yet, and Vanya, who takes his father's body, takes the lead. He warns that the weak brother should not even think that he can claim something. Edward stays below, next to the crown of leaves lying on the ground. On the tree, the shaman is ready to introduce a new king to everyone. Vladimir bows in compliments to the prince, but this does not help him to leave behind the honorable status of an advisor, and Vanya replaces him with his brother Sergei. The new king goes to the tribe and is offered to choose a wife for himself. Instead, Vanya climbs on the tribune, created from other monkeys. He knocks with his fist and declares that he will keep the way of life unchanged and will follow the traditions, like his father. The crowd claps, and the shaman offers Vanya to fulfill one of such ancient traditions and proceed to the meal. Mom, what is it about? It's about Simeon. He must eat him. The son is already ready to eat his father when suddenly he is interrupted by Edward. But he is not going to fight for the throne, but only gives the lost crown, which Vanya puts on the lifeless body of Simeon. Edward asks why there is such a tradition and offers to bury the king instead. The witch replies that only in this way will the wisdom of the father go to the son, and if the ritual is violated, something irreparable will happen. Edward mocks the high-handed words of the shaman, and they intervene. Telling everyone about his origin, the guy declares a new rule: there is no need to eat fathers. But Vanya is still determined, and only a bright lightning and thunderclaps interrupt him. The monkeys hide from the storm in fear, and Edward remains alone with his father's body. Jan joins his friend, and together they throw Simeon down. The anxious freak refuses to get down from the liana for a long time, but Edward manages to persuade him, and then they cover the king's body with a large flat stone. Well done! That's what I call honor. Suddenly, lightning strikes a small tree nearby, setting it on fire. Edward is attracted by the flame and he tries to grab it. He accepts the burn for the fact that the fire is biting and begins to beat him with a stick in return. It lights up and the guy has a real torch in his hand. However, the flame immediately extinguishes the beginning of the downpour and a huge tornado is formed in the desert. The monkeys hide on a tree, driving Vladimir out to die outside. He is dragged into the funnel along with other miserable people, and there Edward falls. The guy runs in a circle and inside the hurricane he notices a beautiful female who is trying to hold on to the branch. Edward almost manages to grab her, but he is thrown out, and the girl flies after him. She falls unconsciously on the ledge, threatening to fall into the abyss. The guy ties himself to the tree and descends behind her, but the wind raises them again into the sky. But Edward, in love, does not let go of the stranger, and Jen helps them to escape, grabbing the torn liana in time. Even with the help of only one hand, Edward pulls the female out of the abyss. But when she wakes up, she gives him a slap right away. The girl speaks another language, which Edward takes as Portuguese. He guesses that the hurricane took the whole family of monkeys into the abyss and tries to sympathize, but the savage only bites back and runs away. Not wanting to part, Edward is chased. He overcomes the runners like a train on the crossing of rhinos and jumps over the lava river. Approaching the volcano, he has to hide from the pterodactyls, which protect their eggs. As a result, he catches up with the girl and climbs the rock with her, overcoming any inconveniences. Edward falls to the ground without strength, and then Lucy calmly introduces herself to him in the familiar language. A surprised guy jumps up and begins to wonder how many things he had to overcome. Why did Lucy run away and pretended not to understand him? But the mysterious girl quickly dispels Edward's discontent, accepting with interest to hug him. After that, she learns how to walk straight. The coach and the student happily fall to the ground, watching the picturesque sunset and the baobab monkey in the distance. They become friends, and Edward tells the girl about his life and royal roots. Lucy is puzzled why the guy then lives like an outcast. In the lava river, Edward sets fire to the stick again and experiments with fire. With the torch in his hands, he approaches his native baobab, and the monkeys begin to wake up in panic. They think that the fire has gone down from the volcano and is going to destroy them. The witch notices Edward, and soon the tribe meets the inventor. This time he offers to drive away the predators with fire, which is very impressive to the audience. Vanya interferes, trying to drive the guy away with a dangerous toy. Trying to please the monkeys even more, Edward divides the fire and Vanya offers everyone to take the torches. But the sticks begin to fall, threatening to burn the house of the monkeys to the ground. The witch orders to drive away the uninvited guests with sticks and stones. Sergei also likes Lucy, and he tries to drag her up. Edward in a jump burns the kidnapper with a torch, saving his girlfriend. Together they take their legs from the mad crowd. From him only troubles. He is against nature. And this is your family. A swarm of predators at night announces that it's time to look for a refuge. Having the most powerful weapon in the savannah in his hands, Edward heads straight to the cave to the Toothless Wolf. He plays and squeezes his home, and they, with Lucy in comfort, are located under the roof. Having forgotten about the torch for a minute, they, like wild animals, are trying to put out the fire, which they do not know where to put. Edward takes himself in his arms and stops the panic, and then invents a bonfire, protecting the danger with stones. Lucy is in love with the guy who is jumping from pain and small burns. She comes closer, and they invent a kiss. Other monkeys see a romantic moment in the huge shadow cast by the fire. They accept to repeat for the lovers, and Vanya and the witch again understand that the power is slipping out of their hands. The tree itself begins to growl loudly, and the king, with a terrible cry, forces the tribe to retreat. In the morning, Lucy teaches Edward to throw flat stones to knock down high-hanging fruits and hunt animals. Nedick again pushes the guys to effectively use the branches as catapults. They learn to extract fire, cutting off a spark with stones, invent spears, and tame the toothless wolf. The whole tribe watches with envy for their success from the height of the branches, and the smell of fried meat finally drives the monkeys crazy. The witch again uses the cavity system to cause a terrifying battle. But one of the children discovers a deception and informs everyone that the spirit of the tree is an invention, and the higher forces are not angry with the monkeys. The shaman is sprinkled with a hail of stones, and the tribe begins to descend to Edward. Even Sergei and Marcel are going down, but the king temporarily blocks their way. Only the witch and the female in love with Ivan remain faithful to him. The monkeys join Edward and Lucy, but the girl is offended for the unfriendliness she had earlier. She drives away the guests, and Edward, who has been waiting for his moment of glory for a long time, tries to persuade her to let the tribe go, wishing to become their new king and change the usual way of life of the monkeys. He makes a compromise. All the monkeys must work, and then they will be allowed to stay. Although in a small cave at night it becomes cramped, Edward quickly comes up with how fun it is for them to spend time. His new invention is music, and the monkeys start dancing. They go day by day and week by week, and the tribe gets better and better settled on the rocks with Edward. Ivan, on the other hand, continues to rule his deserted kingdom. The witch dreams of taking revenge on the outlaw who broke out of power. Soon Lucy and Edward begin to wait for a reunion in the family. The girl refuses to call her son Zinedine Zidane and offers the name Jan. She wants to thank Edward's friend for saving her husband many years ago. The monkeys have a big construction site, and they carry a bunch of logs for the construction of a real city. Life is boiling, and not only Edward uses his mind for the good of the community. Although all the monkeys have mastered on 2 legs, their intellect leaves much to be desired, and the passing couple attacks the stones of the painted mammoths. Having calmed them down, Edward goes further, where he sees a conflict between Sergei and the beggars. Like the head of the construction works, they also invented a way not to carry heavy logs, but still have food. Edward wants to solve the problem like a real king, but Sergei does not like that they are being lured and grabs him by the throat. Suddenly, a swarm of locusts launched by a witch falls on the city. Insects destroy buildings and turn them to dust. Although Edward tries to calm the monkeys down, Sergei leads the tribe to war. Lucy advises Edward to go save his brother before the crowd gets to the tree. At the top of the hill, he is the first to reach Baobab, but Vanya does not respond. Monkeys with torches and spears are already ready to chop down the tree, and any arguments that it will still be useful do not work. Here the king still appears from the shelter. Sergei offers him to stand on 2 legs and choose a new job for himself, but Vanya strongly refuses. Monkeys begin to chop down the roots of Baobab, and the king fiercely defends his house. In a hand-to-hand fight, he will defeat anyone, but Sergei hits him with a torch and Vanya screams in pain. He knocks out the weapon from the hands of the attacker, and the fire is thrown on the lianas, and then on the tree itself. While the king is trying to fight off the crowd, his wife is surrounded by fire from all sides. Edward clings to the liana, from which the fire spreads, and on the other end he clings to the wolf, forcing him to run in the opposite direction from the tree. The guy lifts himself up and saves the female. The tree can no longer be saved, but he wants to at least help Vanya, who is beaten with batons. But suddenly the burning branch of the tree breaks down and crushes Edward. He begs to help him, but the tribe in panic runs away from Baobab. Vanya is the last to rise and still takes his brother away from the tree, which explodes, taking the witch to the other world. The brothers do not turn to the explosion, but they barely take their feet away from the disaster. Later, they inspect the ashes that remained from their home. Edward apologizes for what happened, but Vanya himself takes the blame. In response to the question of how he will live on, a powerful monkey awkwardly tries to stand on 2 legs. Vanya is ready to reconsider his views, and they share the first warm hug in their lives. The wives meet them to pay homage to the monkeys who remembered that they now have nowhere to take the tree. They celebrate that the heirs of Simeon have reconciled, but Sergei begins to drive everyone into panic, indicating that they also no longer have food. Edward sees birds flying south and wants to offer the monkeys to go on a trip. In the general chaos, no one hears him, and Vanya helps to attract attention with a frightening voice. Together they call for order and the monkeys become nomads. They leave the inhabited places where nothing holds them anymore and find forests, rivers, and mountains, my dear. I give you a new world. Here they find Yana, who somehow was the first in these places. The freak, out of joy, throws an old friend up. A kind of humor built on references to everyday French life is difficult to perceive by foreigners. Due to the somewhat outdated style of animation and the difficulties of translation, the cartoon did not find recognition outside of France. The appearance of Vladimir and Sergei's characters are copied from the legendary French comic Louis de Funès, in whose humor the director and performer of the main role, Jamel Debbouze, son of Louis, Olivier, participated in the creation and dialogues of these characters. In the original, the cartoon is called Why I Did Not Eat My Father. This is the director's debut of Debbouze, known in Russia as an Egyptian in Asterix and Obelix. He also voiced and gave appearance to the main character of the cartoon, Edward. When he was 14, Debbouze received a critical injury of the right hand. They hurried to the bus, ran through the rails at the station, and did not notice the approaching train. A reference to this episode is also in the cartoon when Edward rushes to Lucy and waits for the rhinos running in front of him. The name of the film, as always, look in the description for the video. In the meantime, answer in the comments. Do you have any shortcomings that you used as your advantage? And do not forget to subscribe to the channel and like so that cool plots come out as often as possible.